What would you do if you challenged the most powerful man in tech, and he actually showed up? The sun hung low over the Hollywood Hills, painting the sky in flamingo pink and tangerine. The infinity pool shimmered like liquid sapphire, reflecting the careless laughter of LA's young elite. Champagne corks popped, bass from a DJ booth pulsed against the marble floor, and drones hovered overhead to catch the perfect aerial view of what was about to become the most viral moment of the year. Madison Blake stood at the center of it all. Barefoot on the edge of the pool, her designer sundress blowing in the wind, she held a glass of sparkling rose in one hand and an iPhone in the other. Her perfectly contoured face beamed into the camera, live on Instagram to her 7.2 million followers. "Okay guys," she cooed, flipping her platinum blonde curls over one shoulder. "You know how people say rich girls can't do anything without daddy's money? Let's put that to the test." She gestured behind her to the sleek, black Steinway piano set up beside the pool like a decorative art piece. "I challenge Elon Musk, yeah, that Elon, to a piano duel," she said, smirking into the lens. "Me versus the billionaire genius. If he's brave enough to take on a real challenge, he knows where to find me." The crowd at the party erupted in laughter and mock cheers. A few guys started chanting, "Elon! Elon! Elon!" She winked at the camera. "Your move, Space Daddy." She ended the stream, handed the phone to her assistant, and strutted back toward the DJ booth, totally unaware that her 30-second dare was about to flip her entire life upside down. The clip exploded within hours. At first, it was just TikTok teens remixing her audio over cat videos and dance challenges. Then, Twitter/X got hold of it. Threads lit up debating whether Madison Blake even knew how to play piano, or if this was just another publicity stunt by an influencer desperate to stay relevant. People started digging up old videos of Madison playing Chopin in high school recitals. Others unearthed clips of her drunkenly banging out Britney Spears covers at college parties. Memes flew. Reactions piled up. And then, it happened. Elon Musk, tech mogul, space pioneer, Tesla overlord, retweeted the original video with just 2 words. "Challenge accepted." That single tweet triggered a digital earthquake. Every major outlet from CNN to BuzzFeed jumped on the story. "Elon Musk agrees to piano duel with TikTok heiress," trended globally. Reddit threads ran wild with theories. Was it a joke? A publicity stunt? An epic PR trap? No one knew. Not even Madison. The morning after Elon's tweet, Madison sat frozen in her penthouse kitchen, eyes wide as she scrolled through her mentions. "Mad, you okay?" her best friend Ivy asked from across the table, sipping an iced latte with 2 pumps of lavender. Madison blinked. This wasn't supposed to happen. Ivy raised an eyebrow. "Girl, you said it. To millions of people. I thought it would be funny." Madison groaned, burying her head in her arms. "I didn't think he'd actually say yes." "Yeah, well, he did. And now people want blood, or Beethoven." Her assistant, Chase, burst into the room, phone in hand. "TMZ wants a comment. So does Good Morning America. Oh, and someone from Rolling Stone is asking if you'd consider doing a live duet. With Elon. On Mars." Madison looked up. "Tell them all I'm thinking about it." But the truth was, she was panicking. She hadn't played seriously in years. Piano used to be her escape, back when life was quieter, before followers, before fame, before everything turned into content. Now, her fingers felt clumsy. Her confidence was paper-thin. And Elon Musk wasn't just some tech bro, he was Elon freaking Musk. If he even showed up, the whole world would be watching. And laughing. That night, alone in her bedroom, Madison replayed the stream over and over. "Your move, Space Daddy." God, she sounded like a spoiled brat. Maybe she was. She opened her messages. Thousands of DMs. Some cheering her on. Some trashing her. One from her dad. "Madison, what the hell are you doing embarrassing the Blake name again? Call me." She closed the app and sighed. No matter what she did, her father always found a way to make it about him. But this time, maybe it wasn't. Maybe, for once, it was about proving something, to the world, to her father, to herself. She stood up, crossed the room, and opened the grand piano in the corner. The same one her mother used to play on Sunday mornings, back when they still lived together, before her mom got sick and everything changed. She sat down, let her fingers hover over the keys. Took a deep breath. And played. What would you do if you challenged someone with the entire world watching? This story's just getting started. Hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. This duel might just prove that passion still beats power. And tell me, what's the one thing that pushes you forward when the world doubts you? Because for Madison Blake, this wasn't just a challenge, it was a reckoning. And she had no idea what was coming next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Long before she called out Elon Musk in a viral video, Madison Blake was already a household name, at least in households that had oceanfront views, private chefs, and weekly Botox appointments. She was born into luxury. Her father, Charles Blake, was the type of man who turned everything he touched into a high-rise, CEO of Blake International Realty, with holdings from Miami to Dubai. Her mother, Vanessa, was a former classical pianist turned socialite, known in elite circles for her grace, her beauty, and her tragic death from ovarian cancer when Madison was just 16. From the outside, Madison's life was a fairy tale dipped in gold, rodeo drive shopping sprees, ballet lessons in Paris, VIP boxes at Coachella, private tutors, limos, and cameras always flashing. But behind the glossy magazine covers and million-dollar smiles was a girl caught between two worlds, expectation and expression. She didn't want to be a Blake. She wanted to be Madison. As a child, her favorite moments were the ones without cameras, sitting on the piano bench beside her mother, toes barely touching the floor, playing Clair de Lune in a sunlit room filled with jasmine and dust particles dancing in the air. Her mother would close her eyes, listen, and say, "Don't just play the notes, Maddie. Tell the story." But after Vanessa died, the piano was closed. Literally. Charles had movers pack it in velvet and ship it to a storage facility the very next week. "No time for distractions," he'd said. "Your future is business, not Bach." That was the start of Madison's transformation. She became what everyone wanted her to be, Instagram perfect, red carpet ready, brand collaboration savvy. Her talent got buried beneath filters and false lashes. Her voice got quieter under the weight of likes, followers, and approval from people who didn't really know her. Even when she got into USC's Thornton School of Music, her one act of rebellion, her father donated a wing to ease her admission. She dropped out 2 semesters later. "Music is cute, Mads," he told her over steak at Mastro's. "But legacy is power. And the Blake name is your real instrument." By 25, Madison had built a brand, but not a life. She had a line of skincare, a podcast about luxury lifestyle, and an apartment that took up half of a penthouse tower. She had a face that belonged on billboards and an emptiness that couldn't be filled by brand deals or Birkin bags. And most days, she ignored that emptiness. She drowned it in sparkling rose, curated content, and people who told her what she wanted to hear. Until the piano duel. The day after Elon's tweet, Madison's name trended across every platform. It wasn't about skincare or her latest collab, it was about music. The one thing she'd locked away with her mother. Her fans, or as they called themselves, the mediators, were hyped. Show him what a real queen can do. Madison, this is your icon moment. Please tell me you actually play piano, lol, I'm scared. Her haters were louder. Another rich kid trying to stay relevant. She better be ready to get cooked by Elon's AI piano. This is what happens when you run out of content. Underneath all the noise, something unexpected started to stir. Interest. Real interest. Music bloggers began posting about her past recitals. A viral video from age 12 resurfaced, showing Madison playing Liszt's La Campanella in a school concert. Her fingers were a blur, her expression fierce. People couldn't believe it was the same girl who now posted nail tutorials with voiceovers. She used to be incredible, one Redditor wrote. What happened? Even her old piano teacher, Mr. Caldwell, texted her out of nowhere. I saw the video. You were born with a gift. Maybe this is your moment to remember it. She didn't answer. She wasn't ready to admit how long it had been since she'd really played, not just touched the keys, but played. Felt it. Lived it. That night, unable to sleep, she wandered into the media room and found herself staring at a dusty closet in the corner. She opened it. There, covered in an old Hermes throw, was her mother's baby grand. Somehow, she'd gotten it back. She pulled off the cover, sat down on the bench, and opened the lid. Her fingers hovered over the ivory keys, trembling. She pressed one. It rang out like a ghost. In that moment, something shifted. Not in the world. In her. It was like the part of her that had been buried, the girl who used to play barefoot in silk pajamas for her mom on Sunday mornings, had finally woken up. But with that came fear. Because this time, it wasn't just about the music. It was about proving she could be someone outside of the Blake name. Outside of the influencer bubble. Outside of the shadow of her father's empire. The world had thrown down a challenge. And for the first time in a long time. She wanted to win. She opened her laptop and searched for something she hadn't thought about in years, piano coaches in Los Angeles. Most were booked out or catered to children. Then one name popped out, Johan Rains, a reclusive pianist turned coach who taught prodigies and famously turned down a spot at Juilliard to open a modest studio in Echo Park. His website had no photos. Just a single quote. Technique impresses. Emotion moves. Madison clicked book session. It was time to remember who she was before the likes, before the filters, before the brand. She was Madison Blake. And Madison Blake was going to learn to fight with her fingers. By Monday morning, Madison's name was everywhere, and not in the way she was used to. This wasn't another post about her skincare brand, or a paparazzi shot of her leaving Nobu in vintage Dior. This was raw, wild, unfiltered. The world wasn't admiring her, they were watching her. Waiting. And the only question on everyone's lips was, can she actually play? The original live stream, Madison, wine glass in hand, poolside and confident, had hit 16.3 million views on TikTok in just under 48 hours. A clipped version on X, formerly Twitter, had twice that. Edits popped up everywhere. She was auto-tuned, remixed, slowed down, and looped into memes with dramatic music and titles like Elon vs. Madison, Clash of the Keys, and Rich Girl Wrecked in Real Time. Even CNN ran a feature. Can a socialite beat a billionaire at Beethoven? A modern duel in the age of likes. The commentary split the internet in half. Some praised her confidence, finally, a woman standing up to Silicon Valley's self-appointed overlord. Others mocked the challenge entirely, calling it a publicity stunt so out of touch, it's practically satire. But none of that compared to what happened when Elon Musk officially accepted the duel. It wasn't even flashy. Just one reply on Twitter. Challenge accepted. Let's make this interesting. And suddenly the stakes weren't just viral, they were historic. Musk's fanbase went feral. Reddit's r/Elon Musk subreddit exploded with piano memes. Tech YouTubers speculated that Elon might use some kind of AI-assisted performance. Some even suggested he'd build a self-playing Tesla piano just for the event. And deep in a corner of Reddit, someone had already launched a site titled MadisonVSMusk.com with a countdown clock and merch. The duel was no longer a maybe. It was a movement. Back in her penthouse, Madison stared at the screen, feeling her stomach knot tighter with every passing second. The wine she drank to calm down wasn't helping anymore. Her assistant, Chase, was pacing. "Okay, TMZ wants an exclusive," Vogue emailed about a photo shoot, wait for it, at the piano, and Spotify wants to sponsor a Duel playlist. "We are literally breaking the internet." Ivy, her best friend, tossed her phone on the couch. "You're trending higher than the Met Gala, Mads. And that was last night." Madison's lips barely moved. "I didn't think he'd say yes." Ivy crossed her arms. "You called him out on live stream, while holding Rose and wearing Gucci slides. What exactly did you think would happen? That he'd ignore me?" But he hadn't. And now, the whole world wanted to watch her play. Later that night, Madison opened her old private Instagram account, the one with barely 200 followers from college. The one that didn't have sponsors, filters, or fake smiles. She hadn't touched it in 3 years. She scrolled through photos of dorm rooms, blurry selfies, a video of her playing piano in the dark, lit only by string lights. She remembered that night. It was raining. She'd just found out her dad had threatened to pull her out of music school unless she started taking real-world skills seriously. She had cried for hours. Then played until the sun came up. It was the last time she'd lost herself in music, not for performance, not for validation. Just, because it hurt. Now, here she was, about to perform for millions. Not out of pain, but to prove something. Though she still wasn't sure exactly what. The next morning, a knock at her door snapped her back to reality. It was Chase, holding a clipboard, coffee, and 3 event proposals. "So. We've got 3 stadiums offering to host the Duel live. One in LA, one in New York, and, get this, SpaceX wants to build a temporary performance platform at Starbase in Texas." Madison stared at him. "Like, an actual stage? At a rocket base?" "Yeah," Chase said, sipping his espresso. "Because apparently, everything is a launch now." She shook her head. "Not yet. I'm not choosing anything until I'm ready." Chase blinked. "Wait. Are you actually going to do this?" Madison took a deep breath. "I've already booked a coach." That shut him up. Later that day, she posted a video to her 7.2 million followers. No filters. No glam. Just her in a hoodie, sitting at the piano. "Hey, guys. I know a lot of you are wondering if this is real. It is. I challenged Elon Musk to a piano duel. And he said yes. So I guess I have something to prove." She looked down, touched one key gently. "I haven't performed in years. But music used to be everything to me. I'm not doing this to go viral. I'm doing this because it scares the hell out of me." She smiled, a little shaky. "See you on stage." The video hit 25 million views in less than 24 hours. And for the first time, the comments weren't just jokes or insults. They were filled with hope. "Girl, you got this. Play from your soul, not from your status. Please bring the fire. I believe in you." Meanwhile, across the country in Texas, at a sleek, glass-walled compound, Elon Musk was sitting at a piano of his own, surrounded by engineers and machines. He stared at the keys for a second, then turned to his assistant. "Build me something that can feel." The assistant blinked. "You mean, an AI that plays with emotion?" Elon smiled. "No. I mean an AI that understands why she plays." The morning after Madison posted her raw video, the world watched as Elon Musk did something unexpected. Instead of firing off a tweet or sending a message through his PR team, he released a YouTube video. No flashy effects, no wild stunts, just Elon in a black hoodie, sitting at a grand piano in the middle of his sprawling, minimalist office. He adjusted his seat, ran his fingers over the keys, and then stared directly into the camera. "Madison," he said, his voice low, almost contemplative, "I hear you've challenged me to a piano duel." He leaned back slightly, a small grin crossing his face. "I didn't think I'd see the day when a challenge like this came from a member of the elite, but here we are." A slight chuckle escaped him. "To be clear, this won't be some gimmick or publicity stunt. It's about music. And about truth. And I respect anyone who's brave enough to face their truth. So, I accept." He paused, as if considering something. "However, I won't just show up and play. I'm going to make this interesting." The camera zoomed in on him. "I'll be bringing my own piano. A little something I've been working on, an AI-powered grand that not only plays the music but can feel the emotional weight of it." The internet blew up. His words sent shockwaves through the social media universe, with countless reactions flooding every corner of the web. From tech nerds to music lovers, people couldn't decide whether to laugh, cry, or panic. Some people thought Elon was trying to flex his tech genius while others believed he was genuinely taking the challenge seriously. But the one thing everyone agreed on: this was no longer just a celebrity face-off. It was a battle of ideologies. For Madison, the video was a challenge, yes, but it was also a sharp reminder of just how much she had to prove. Elon Musk wasn't just a businessman, a visionary, or a tech mogul. He was a force of nature. And he had brought a weapon to this duel that she couldn't even comprehend. She paced back and forth in her penthouse, trying to process it all. The comments flooded in, ranging from excited to worried. Did he just say AI can feel music? This is going to be one hell of a duel. Musk is gonna smoke her. But I'm still rooting for her. Mads, you better start practicing. This is no joke. Chase entered the room, his usual polished demeanor replaced with a touch of awe. Elon's got an AI piano, Mads. That's next level, even for him. She looked out the window, the skyline of LA stretching before her, her fingers still trembling from Elon's challenge. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. For a split second, she wondered if she had made a mistake. But no, she couldn't back down now. "Set up a meeting with Johan Reigns," she said firmly, turning to Chase. "I'm going to need more than just practice. I need to understand what I'm up against." "All the way." Chase nodded. "On it." The next few days were a blur. Johan Reigns, her coach, was exactly who she needed. A soft-spoken, unassuming genius who could transform her every movement on the keys. Johan's reputation as a reclusive genius wasn't for nothing. He saw music as a deeply emotional language, one that could connect the human soul to the universe. He wasn't there to turn Madison into a performer, he was there to help her rediscover the art of playing. At the first session, Johan had her sit in front of the piano in complete silence. "Close your eyes," he instructed. "Feel the keys before you touch them." Madison hesitated, unsure of what exactly he wanted her to do. But she trusted him. Slowly, she placed her fingers on the keys, feeling the coolness of the ivory. She breathed deeply, focusing on the weight of the moment. Then Johan spoke softly. "Music isn't just about technique or ability. It's about vulnerability. It's about being seen." Madison's heart raced. He was right. Her entire life had been about avoiding vulnerability, about performing for the camera, for the brand, for her father's legacy. Music had always been her refuge, but she had turned it into another commodity. That night, as Madison lay awake in her massive bed, she thought about what Johan had said. She replayed Elon's video in her head, the way he casually brushed off the challenge with his signature smug confidence, but then revealed that he would bring an AI piano. The thought of a machine interpreting emotion on the keys was jarring to her. How could she possibly compete with that? But deep down, she knew. The true essence of music wasn't in the technology, no matter how advanced it was. It wasn't in the number of zeros on a paycheck or the artificial intelligence built into a grand piano. It was in the human connection. The next day, she put in hours at the piano. Johann pushed her to rediscover pieces she hadn't played in years, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor, and even Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. She had to feel every note, every shift in the music, and then translate that emotion into her fingers. After hours of practice, Madison's fingers began to move with more fluidity, more grace. Slowly, something that had been buried deep inside her started to surface. The once empty feeling in her chest began to fill with something more powerful than vanity or fame. It was passion. She was ready. Across the country, Elon Musk was preparing in his own way. But his strategy was more about the spectacle. The AI-powered piano was being tuned and calibrated for the Duel, and he was adding his signature touch. This wasn't just about playing music, it was about proving a point. He didn't care about feeling the music as much as he cared about conquering the impossible. It was game time. And he was ready to show the world that no challenge was too great, no matter who you were. The battle was set. Two forces of nature, two worlds colliding. One playing for legacy, one playing for truth. And in just a few days, the world would find out which one would win. The moment had arrived. Madison stood backstage, peering through the velvet curtains, her pulse quickening. The lights were dim, but she could hear the audience gathering in the stadium. The air was thick with anticipation, people from all over the world were waiting to witness what was being touted as the duel of the century. A simple piano battle, but one that had somehow morphed into a clash of philosophies, egos, and emotions. As the clock ticked down to the start of the event, Madison's mind raced. She had practiced more in the last week than she had in the past 5 years combined. But no amount of practice could prepare her for the magnitude of what was about to happen. She wasn't just playing for herself anymore. She was playing for the people who believed in her, the ones who thought that maybe, just maybe, a self-made billionaire like Elon Musk could be beaten at something as pure as music. Could she actually do this? 5 minutes, Chase said, looking up from his phone. He was trying to hide the nerves, but she could see the beads of sweat on his forehead. Madison nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the piano keys. She could hear Johann's words from their last session echoing in her head, "You are not just playing the notes. You are telling a story. Your story." But how could she tell her story through a piano when the world expected her to win? Meanwhile, on the other side of the stadium, Elon Musk was preparing for the duel in a starkly different way. Unlike Madison, who had surrounded herself with mentors and friends, Elon was a lone wolf, always operating under his own terms. His team had built an AI piano capable of responding to his emotions, but more importantly, it could learn from the music. His approach wasn't just about playing notes, it was about making sure that the AI understood the nuances of every piece, every dynamic shift, and every moment of silence. His fingers hovered over the keys of his own piano, a sleek, futuristic creation that looked more like a work of art than a musical instrument. He stared down at it, as if waiting for it to speak back to him. He wasn't nervous, Elon Musk never felt nervous. But he did feel something, anticipation. This wasn't just about proving his superiority. It was about showing that technology could transcend human limitations. Music was just the perfect stage for it. His assistant walked in with a tablet, showing him the latest social media buzz. A few fans had posted the idea that maybe Elon had chosen the AI piano because he was too good, too competitive, afraid of losing to a mere human. Elon chuckled, tapping the screen with his finger. "Let them think what they want. They'll be more impressed when I play. I'll show them the future." The lights dimmed, and Madison's heartbeat echoed in her ears as the announcer's voice rang through the stadium. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight for the ultimate musical showdown. On this stage, we have two of the world's most high-profile figures, Madison Montgomery, heir to one of the largest beauty empires in the world, and tech mogul and innovator, Elon Musk. They will face off in a live piano duel to see who is truly the better musician. Let the battle begin. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, the energy palpable in the air. Madison adjusted her white gown, the satin fabric flowing around her as she made her way onto the stage. The sound of the crowd faded into the background as she walked up to the grand piano at center stage. It was sleek and minimalist, the black and gold design matching her outfit perfectly. But it wasn't just the beauty of the piano that made her pause for a split second, it was the moment. The gravity of it all. As she settled into the bench, the spotlight blinding her for a moment, she realized just how far she had come. This was more than a viral moment. This was a chance for her to prove that her worth wasn't just tied to her family's money or her brand's success. This was about her. She took a deep breath, placing her fingers on the keys, the cool ivory comforting beneath her fingertips. She was ready. She had to be. Across the stage, Elon took his place at his custom-designed AI piano. The machine hummed quietly, its sleek, metallic surface glistening under the lights. It looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, a piano designed to blend music and technology seamlessly. Elon's fingers brushed against the keys, and the AI piano came to life. Its lights blinked, and a soft, robotic voice sounded, as though it was acknowledging its master. Testing. 1, 2, 3. A low chuckle escaped Elon's lips. He cracked his knuckles, staring out into the audience. The challenge had already begun. He was in his element, technology, innovation, and control. The announcer's voice returned, cutting through the tension. Let's begin with the first round. Each player will perform a piece of their choice. Madison Montgomery, your turn. Please, show us what you've got. The crowd cheered as Madison adjusted her seat, her fingers hovering over the keys. The first notes of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata flowed from her hands, filling the space with a sense of melancholy and beauty. She'd chosen this piece because it spoke to her, the pain of vulnerability. Each note was a release of the walls she'd built around herself for so long. She wasn't just playing, she was feeling. The sound echoed through the stadium, mesmerizing the audience. Madison closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music carry her, taking her to a place where everything else faded. The sharpness of the spotlight, the weight of the world on her shoulders, all of it dissolved into the sonata's smooth, mournful chords. Across the stage, Elon was already adjusting his fingers over his AI-powered piano. The challenge had just begun, and he was eager to take the first shot. He wasn't about to let her take the lead. Not yet. His fingers danced across the keys, and as he played, the AI piano responded, smooth, calculated, and perfect. There was no hesitation, no emotion. Just precision. The music filled the air, not as raw emotion, but as an advanced, almost mechanical masterpiece. The audience was stunned by the sound, but it didn't quite feel like Madison's performance. There was no heart, no soul, just the science of sound. The first round was over. The crowd roared in applause, torn between the beauty of Madison's raw, human performance and the awe-inspiring technological feat of Elon's AI piano. But deep down, they knew the real duel was just beginning. The arena buzzed with excitement. The first round had just ended, but the atmosphere felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Both Madison and Elon had shown their skills, but the stakes had just been raised. The crowd was on edge, waiting to see what would happen next. Madison wiped the sweat from her palms, trying to steady her breathing. Her heart was still pounding from the emotional intensity of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The crowd's reaction had been deafening, but the applause for Elon's performance had been louder. There was no denying the power of his AI piano, it was flawless. Cold. Perfect. But it didn't have soul. Madison's performance had been raw. Every note she played had come from deep within her, a reflection of her growth, her struggles, and her emotions. The crowd had felt it. She had seen it in their faces, heard it in the hushed murmurs as she left the stage. Now, as she sat at the grand piano for the second round, her fingers trembling slightly, she couldn't help but feel that Elon had already won the first battle. As the announcer stepped up to the microphone, his voice boomed over the loudspeakers, cutting through the tension like a knife. Ladies and gentlemen, round 2 begins now. This time, both competitors will perform an original piece. The winner of this round will determine the ultimate victor. Madison Montgomery, you're up next. Show us what you've got. The crowd held its collective breath as Madison stood up, her heart racing. An original piece. She had prepared for this moment, but now it felt different. This wasn't just a test of her skills, it was a test of her very essence. Could she create something on the spot, something that would speak to the crowd, something that could rival Elon's technological masterpiece? Madison closed her eyes for a moment, gathering herself. She'd written a piece, but this wasn't just a composition, it was a conversation. A message she wanted to send to the world. The music was born from her desire to prove that technology, no matter how advanced, couldn't replace what it meant to be human. To feel. To struggle. To love. Her fingers touched the keys lightly at first, as the haunting melody of her original piece began to take form. The audience was silent, drawn in by the delicate beauty of the sound. Slowly, the piece built in intensity, rising like a wave. She poured everything into it, the pain, the triumph, the hope. As she played, she thought of everything that had led her to this point, the pressure of her family's legacy, the challenge from Elon, and most importantly, her own self-doubt. This was her moment to finally be free from those constraints, to stop hiding behind the image that had been built for her. The piece was personal, intimate, a reflection of her journey from an heiress to a woman who was finally finding herself. The crowd erupted into applause when she finished. Madison took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing pulse. The performance had been everything she wanted it to be. It wasn't just about showing off her technical ability, it was about making the world hear her truth. She felt her chest swell with pride, but there was no time to savor the moment. Elon Musk was next. Madison quickly turned her attention to Elon, who was now seated at his AI piano, his usual confident smirk in place. As he placed his fingers on the keys, there was an eerie stillness. The machine hummed to life, the sleek design of the piano lighting up as it scanned Elon's movements. He had spent days tweaking the program, ensuring that the AI was emotionally responsive, able to interpret each shift in his finger movements and mirror the emotional content of his performance. He began to play, and the music was almost too perfect. The technical precision of the AI piano was unmatched, every note perfectly placed, every crescendo controlled with surgical precision. The piece Elon played was grand, sweeping, and impressive. But as the music grew, Madison noticed something odd. It lacked warmth. The audience was in awe of the sound, but there was a palpable distance. It was like listening to a machine playing, no matter how well it was executed. The music was beautiful, yes, but it was devoid of the one thing that made it real. Elon's gaze never left the piano, his focus sharp and calculated. He wasn't playing the piece for the audience. He wasn't playing it for anyone. He was playing it for the machine. As the final note of Elon's performance echoed throughout the stadium, the crowd erupted into applause. It was clear that, technically, Elon had dominated. The sound was pristine, immaculate, like nothing anyone had ever heard before. His AI piano was a marvel of engineering, there was no denying that. But Madison could see it. She could feel it. She had won. The announcer stepped up once more, holding a microphone to his mouth. And now, the judges will deliberate on the winner of the second round. The tension in the air was thick. Madison tried to maintain her composure, but her mind was swirling. Elon's performance had been flawless, there was no denying that. But he had played a machine. He hadn't connected to the music. He hadn't opened his soul to the audience. The judges took their time, whispering amongst themselves. Madison's nerves were on edge, but she remained seated, trying to focus on her breathing. It's not about the win, she reminded herself. It's about the message. Finally, the announcer returned to the stage with the results. The crowd went silent, all eyes on him. After much deliberation, the judges have come to a decision. The winner of the second round is... A drumroll echoed through the stadium. Madison Montgomery. The crowd went wild. Madison stood, her heart in her throat, as the audience erupted in applause. It was overwhelming. She had done it. She had won the second round, and with it, a major victory over her own doubts. She had proven that music was more than just technology, it was human. Elon smiled, a nod of acknowledgement, but Madison could see the gears turning in his mind. This battle wasn't over. The final round was coming. And neither of them would go down without a fight. The final round loomed. Madison stood backstage, the cool metal walls closing in on her. The echoes of the crowd's wild applause from the second round still reverberated in her mind, but the thrill of the victory had already begun to fade. Her heart was pounding, and every inch of her body felt like a live wire, charged with anticipation. It's not over yet. That's what she kept telling herself. No matter how much she'd won in the second round, it all came down to this. This was the moment that could make or break her. Elon Musk had been a machine in the first round, cold, calculated, precise. His performance had been breathtaking, yes, but it lacked what Madison had, the human touch. In the second round, she'd proven her point, but Elon was no ordinary man. His intellect, his vision, his drive, he wasn't going to let a piano duel be the place where he showed weakness. And she knew he would come back harder, faster, and more determined. She turned her head, trying to shake off the nervous tension creeping up her spine, but the tightness in her chest only grew. The door to the backstage area opened with a creak, and Chase stepped in, his face more serious than she'd seen it all day. "Madison," he said, his voice low, "this is it. You're not just playing for the crowd or for yourself anymore. You're playing to prove something bigger. To show that music isn't just about perfect technique, it's about passion, heart, soul." Madison nodded, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. Passion, heart, soul. She had to believe that. She had to hold on to that as her anchor. As the final round approached, everything was riding on her ability to let go of the pressure and trust herself. Elon, on the other hand, sat in his private suite, his face illuminated by the glow of multiple screens. His AI piano was perfectly calibrated, ready for the final round. The program was updated, the music embedded into its systems, and everything was set for a performance that would solidify his superiority. But Elon wasn't worried. He knew what was coming. He had spent years pushing the boundaries of technology, whether it was electric cars or space exploration. Now, he was pushing the boundaries of music. His piano was more than an instrument. It was a tool, a weapon that could calculate and execute sound in ways no human could ever replicate. He glanced at his wristwatch. The crowd was waiting. His moment was here. The announcer's voice rang through the arena, silencing the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, the final round begins now. Please welcome to the stage, the final competitor, the brilliant, the innovative, the one and only, Elon Musk." The stadium erupted into applause. Madison watched as Elon strode confidently to the stage, his AI piano rolling behind him on a platform. His posture was stiff, almost robotic, but his eyes were locked on the piano. This wasn't just another performance for Elon, it was the culmination of years of progress, of pushing limits. Madison stood next in line. The announcer's voice cut through the air once more. "And now, for the final competitor, the heir to a beauty empire and a force to be reckoned with, the one and only, Madison Montgomery." Her name echoed across the stadium, and the crowd cheered loudly. But Madison didn't hear them. Her focus was on the grand piano before her. It was her instrument, her chance to speak through the keys, to connect with the world on a deeper level than any machine ever could. She stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. This was her time. She was not just playing to win, she was playing to show that she had earned her place. With a deep breath, she sat at the piano, her fingers brushing the keys before beginning the final piece she had composed, a melody of hope, loss, and victory. The first notes of Elon's piece rang through the stadium, a perfectly synchronized and flawless execution of every note. The AI piano responded with precision. It was beautiful, but it was mechanical. There was no heart behind it, just algorithmic perfection. The crowd was impressed, but Madison could see the look on their faces. They were awed, but not moved. Elon's music was impressive, but it lacked warmth. The human element was missing. As Madison's turn approached, she looked out over the audience. She saw their faces, some of them skeptical, some of them cheering her on. But she knew the real question was whether they could feel her music. She started to play, and the first notes of her original composition floated into the air. It was a haunting, powerful melody, a culmination of everything she had learned on her journey. She poured herself into it, drawing on every emotion she had felt, every fear, every dream. As she played, the music swelled, enveloping the stadium, pulling the audience into her world. She wasn't just playing a piece, she was telling a story. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't just playing for herself, she was playing for everyone who had ever believed in her. Each note felt like a step toward something bigger than herself. It was no longer about winning the duel. It was about showing that even in a world of machines and technology, the human spirit could still create something that would resonate deeply. Something that would last. The final note echoed through the arena, and for a moment, the world stood still. Madison took a breath, her heart racing, her fingers still resting on the keys. The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, it began, applause, growing louder with each passing second. Cheers erupted as the audience jumped to their feet. She had done it. She had truly done it. Elon, for all his technological brilliance, remained seated. He was calm, his usual aloofness back in full force. But Madison could see the subtle shift in his posture. He wasn't just a man who had played the game, he was a man who had lost. This wasn't just a loss of a duel. It was the realization that the technology he had created, as powerful as it was, could never replace what it meant to be human. The announcer stepped forward one final time. And with that, the judges have made their decision. The winner of the grand piano duel is. The crowd waited with bated breath. Madison Montgomery. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Madison felt her knees go weak, but she stayed standing, her hands shaking. This was it. The moment when everything changed. She had won. She had beaten Elon Musk at his own game, not with a machine, but with the human spirit. The air felt electric. Madison stood frozen at the piano, her fingers still resting on the keys as the crowd erupted in wild applause. She had won. She had done the impossible. The world had just witnessed a battle between the world's most advanced technology and the raw, unfiltered power of human emotion, and she had emerged victorious. But as the cheers washed over her, a strange sense of emptiness settled in her chest. Is this what winning feels like? Madison smiled weakly, blinking back the tears that had suddenly appeared in her eyes. Her heart raced, but her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The victory was hers, yes, but it didn't feel as satisfying as she'd imagined. There was no moment of relief, no rush of triumph. She had beaten Elon Musk, not just in a piano duel but in something deeper, something more meaningful. But at what cost? As she made her way off the stage, the world seemed to slow around her. She could hear the faint echo of the crowd's applause, but the noise felt distant now. She walked toward her family, who were waiting in the wings, their faces beaming with pride. But there was something in their eyes, something that made her hesitate. Madison, that was incredible, her father, Henry Montgomery, said, pulling her into a tight hug. You did it. You beat him. Madison forced a smile, but her heart wasn't in it. She had won, but at what cost? Thanks, Dad, she said softly, trying to push the doubts from her mind. Her mother, Julia Montgomery, joined the hug. You've made history, sweetie, she said, her voice laced with pride. This will change everything for you. For us. Madison nodded absently. She looked out over the sea of people still cheering, her eyes searching for him. And there he was. Elon Musk stood off to the side of the stage, his hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket, watching her with a bemused expression. Despite the outcome, he hadn't lost his usual cool demeanor. But there was something else in his eyes now, a flicker of something Madison couldn't quite place. For a moment, their eyes met, and she saw a flicker of respect. As Madison made her way backstage, she was immediately surrounded by reporters, cameras flashing, microphones shoved in her face. How does it feel to defeat Elon Musk? One reporter asked. Do you think this will change the way the world views music and technology? Another chimed in. The questions came fast, each one more eager than the last. But Madison barely heard them. Her mind was still swirling with everything that had happened. Madison. Over here, a familiar voice called out. Chase appeared through the sea of people, his face lighting up as he rushed toward her. You did it, he said, his voice full of awe. Yeah, I did, she replied quietly, her thoughts still scattered. He gave her a wide grin. Are you kidding? You destroyed him. The crowd went nuts. You were amazing. Madison managed a small smile, but the weight of her victory still sat heavily on her chest. It just doesn't feel the way I thought it would, she admitted. I thought beating Elon would feel different. More satisfying. But it doesn't. Chase frowned, clearly confused. But you won. You proved that emotion can still beat technology. That's huge, Madison. You've just changed everything. She nodded, but the words didn't quite comfort her. Back in her dressing room, Madison collapsed into the plush armchair, her hands resting in her lap. She stared at the reflection in the mirror, the image of the young woman who had just accomplished the unthinkable. The world was praising her, celebrating her victory. But inside, she felt a strange emptiness that couldn't be ignored. What's next? She had won. She had proven herself, but what did it all mean? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Elon? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The door creaked open, and there he was, standing in the doorway, his hands still tucked into his pockets. The sharp lines of his suit and his ever-present calm demeanor made him appear almost untouchable. But today was different. There was no mask, no hidden arrogance. He looked human. Congratulations, Elon said, his voice sincere but measured. You earned it. Madison raised an eyebrow. Is that all you're going to say? Elon shrugged, his expression unreadable. What else is there to say? You won. But I think we both know it's not really over. Madison felt a chill crawl up her spine. She stood up, her legs still shaky from the intensity of the duel. What do you mean by that? I mean, Elon continued, his gaze fixed on her, that while you've proved something today, the world isn't just going to change overnight. Technology and art, music, they're not mutually exclusive. This duel didn't prove that. It just proved that there's more to the story. I don't think this is over. In fact, I think it's only the beginning. Madison swallowed hard. You're saying you're going to challenge me again? Elon smirked, his lips curling slightly. Maybe not in the way you're thinking. But something tells me this isn't the last time you and I will cross paths. He turned to leave, pausing in the doorway. Enjoy the victory while you can, Madison. But remember, in the world we're living in, the game never stops. As the door clicked shut behind him, Madison stood there, her heart still racing, her mind on fire. What did Elon mean by that? What was coming next? As the hours passed and the event wound down, Madison found herself back in her hotel room, alone, finally able to process everything that had happened. Was this what I really wanted? The bright lights of the city outside her window felt distant, almost unreal. She had won the duel. She had proven her point, but what now? She couldn't help but wonder if she had just opened the door to something far bigger than she had ever anticipated. And the strange feeling in her chest wasn't going away. Something was brewing on the horizon, something bigger than she could imagine. Elon had made it clear, this wasn't over. The game had just begun. Madison lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as the city lights outside flickered like 1,000 tiny stars. The world outside seemed to be going on, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But in her mind, everything had shifted. She had won the piano duel, sure. But the uneasy feeling in her chest, like a knot tightening deeper and deeper, refused to let go. Elon's words haunted her, this isn't over. The game never stops. She sat up, her fingers running through her disheveled hair. What did he mean by that? She'd expected the victory to feel like an ending, like the completion of a journey. But instead, it felt like the opening of a door, one that led into the unknown. The sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand interrupted her thoughts. With a sigh, she reached over and picked it up. It was a message from Chase. Chase, we need to talk. Call me when you get a chance. She frowned. The urgency in his message made her stomach tighten. The past few days had been a whirlwind of interviews and celebrations, but she hadn't spoken to Chase much since the duel. He had been caught up in the frenzy, just like everyone else. But now, something felt off. She quickly dialed his number. Chase picked up on the second ring. Madison, he said, his voice low and tense. I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you're in danger. Madison's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Danger from who? I've been doing some digging, Chase continued, his tone grim. Ever since you won the duel, there's been a lot of movement behind the scenes. You're not the only one who's been watching Elon. There's a lot of powerful people invested in him, and you just publicly embarrassed him. It's not just about the duel anymore, Madison. You've become a target. Madison felt the color drain from her face. A target? For what? I don't know yet, Chase replied, his voice tight. But I'm getting messages. Some very strange things are happening. People are starting to make threats. And it's not just fans or critics. It's bigger than that. I don't know who's behind it, but they don't want you in the spotlight anymore. Madison's hands trembled as she gripped the phone. Targeted? What did that even mean? She had won a piano duel, not started a war. Chase, what do I do? She whispered, panic creeping into her voice. You need to be careful, he said, his voice urging caution. And I think it's time for us to start figuring out who's pulling the strings behind all of this. I don't think this is just about Elon being upset over losing a duel. There's something else going on here. Something bigger. The next morning, Madison woke up to an entirely different world. The news was flooded with stories about her victory, but they had quickly shifted from admiration to criticism. Headlines read, Tech billionaire humiliated by rich girl in piano duel, Elon Musk's latest failure, is this the end of his reign, and, is Madison Montgomery the new face of the music world? But buried in between all the praise and the snide commentary, something caught her eye. Musk Incorporated withdraws sponsorship from Montgomery's beauty line, in response to shocking duel results. Her heart sank as she read the article. Elon Musk's company had withdrawn support from Montgomery Cosmetics, pulling out of an exclusive deal worth millions. This can't be happening, Madison muttered under her breath. What's he trying to do? Chase's call came in shortly after she read the article. Madison, he said urgently, I've found something. It's not just Musk pulling strings here. His company is tied up with some major investors, and they've all been pulling their weight behind him. I think they might be trying to destroy everything you've built. Madison's stomach twisted. What do you mean by destroy? Like, sabotage? Exactly, Chase said. It's becoming clear that there's more at play here than just some hurt feelings over a duel. Someone is trying to make sure you don't have the platform to fight back. You're the enemy now, Madison. You've made a powerful group of people uncomfortable. Madison sat in stunned silence, her mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had wanted to prove that human creativity and emotion were more important than cold technology, but now it seemed like she was being dragged into a battle much bigger than she'd ever imagined. She glanced at her phone, the steady stream of notifications no longer bringing joy, but anxiety. Her father's business empire, her own company, was now being attacked by the very people who had once shown interest in supporting her. Her thoughts turned back to Elon's words. This is only the beginning. Was he right? The days that followed were a blur of press conferences, legal threats, and shadowy phone calls. Madison's team scrambled to find a way to fight back against the public relations nightmare Musk had set in motion. They were dealing with a much larger machine than they'd realized. Chase had been right, Madison was no longer just a beauty mogul. She was now a pawn in a game of corporate power, manipulation, and control. But she wasn't going to back down. She'd already beaten Elon once. Why not do it again? One evening, as Madison sat in her office, going over paperwork with her legal team, a new email came through. It was from an unknown sender. You think you've won, but you've only begun to see the true power behind Musk. He's not the one you need to be worried about. It's the people who fund him, who control him. They're coming for you. You won't win this time. The email sent a chill down her spine, its cryptic words lingering like a bad omen. But beneath the fear, there was a spark, one that hadn't been there before. This was no longer just about proving herself in a duel. This was a battle for her future, for everything she had worked so hard for. And she wasn't going to let anyone, no matter how powerful they were, take that away from her. Madison stood up, determination coursing through her veins. This was only the beginning, and she was ready. Ready to face whatever came next. Ready to fight for what she believed in. The game had shifted. But this time, she would be the one pulling the strings. Madison stood at the head of the boardroom table, her fingers lightly tapping the surface as she looked out over the gathered group of investors, legal advisors, and her inner circle. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, a stark contrast to the usual confidence that came with success. Everything had changed in the last few days. It wasn't just a piano duel anymore. This was about power. Control. Influence. And Madison wasn't about to back down. Chase sat beside her, his usual upbeat demeanor replaced by a look of grim determination. Across the table, her father, Henry Montgomery, was silently reviewing a pile of documents, his brow furrowed in concentration. Her mother, Julia, stood nearby, offering a supportive glance, but even she could sense the severity of the situation. The fallout from the duel had been swift, but what came next had been even more devastating. Musk Incorporated had withdrawn their sponsorship of her beauty line. Multiple other brands had followed suit. Her social media accounts, once flooded with positive comments, were now inundated with trolls, fake accounts, and cryptic threats. The public relations nightmare was growing. And the worst part? Elon Musk was barely even reacting. You're telling me we have no leverage left? Madison asked, her voice calm but firm, the sharp edge of frustration hidden beneath the surface. Chase spoke up, his tone urgent. It's not that we don't have leverage, it's just that it's not the right kind anymore. Elon's company is one thing, but the people backing him are the real force here. We're dealing with a web of investors who have a much bigger influence than we thought. They're pulling strings behind the scenes, and we don't even know who they are yet. Madison's eyes narrowed. And who exactly are these people? How do we fight them? Chase exhaled sharply. That's the problem. We don't know their names. But what we do know is that they control the markets, media, and a lot of other powerful players. Musk himself might seem like the front-runner, but he's just a puppet for a much larger group. Henry looked up from his paperwork, his voice low. We need a plan. You're right, Madison. This isn't just about you anymore, it's about everything we've built. Your mother and I didn't work this hard for you to just be another casualty in someone's corporate power struggle. Madison clenched her jaw. She couldn't lose everything she had worked for. She had spent years building her brand, her cosmetics line, and her reputation. Now, it felt like everything was on the brink of crumbling. But she wasn't about to let that happen. Later that evening, as Madison sat alone in her penthouse apartment, the weight of the situation settled deeper into her bones. She hadn't expected things to escalate so quickly. She hadn't anticipated the sheer scale of the forces aligned against her. But now she had to make a choice. Do I run, or do I fight? Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her thoughts. The screen displayed an encrypted message from an anonymous source. You're not just fighting Elon Musk. You're fighting the people who made him. They control everything. And they're coming for you. But you can still fight back. You'll need allies, trust the right ones. Time is running out. The message sent a shiver down her spine. The cryptic warning only made the situation feel more real. She was facing an enemy she couldn't see, couldn't understand. But one thing was certain, she couldn't face it alone. The following morning, Madison had a meeting with her closest advisors. She had made a decision. We need to fight fire with fire, she said, standing at the head of the table, her voice strong. We can't let them control the narrative. We're going on the offensive. Chase raised an eyebrow. What exactly are you thinking, Madison? She turned to face him, her gaze steady. We're going to find out who's behind all of this. We need to break through the layers of secrecy and expose the puppet masters. It's time to go public. Her father shook his head slowly. You can't just expose people you don't know, Madison. You could make things worse. There are too many powerful interests involved. Madison's eyes flashed with determination. I'm not just going to sit here and wait for them to take everything from me. If I have to risk everything to take them down, then that's what I'll do. The plan began to take shape over the next few days. Madison and her team worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind the people backing Musk. The deeper they dug, the more they realized that the conspiracy went far beyond just business rivals and corporate maneuvering. There were government connections, hidden deals, and a vast network of financial backers with interests that spanned the globe. Some of the names they uncovered were almost too big to fathom, people who controlled everything from media empires to energy companies. Musk had been the public face of this operation, but the people behind him were the true masterminds. One evening, as Madison and Chase were poring over documents, a breakthrough came. Chase had managed to track down a series of leaked emails that implicated several high-profile figures in orchestrating the campaign against her. The names that appeared in those emails made Madison's heart race. These weren't just powerful players, these were the people who had been pulling strings for years, shaping the course of history in ways she couldn't even imagine. This is it, Chase said, his voice barely a whisper. We have them. Madison leaned in closer, her mind working through the implications. She could expose them, go public with everything they had uncovered. But it wouldn't be easy. The risk was enormous. The people she was up against had resources that could destroy her in an instant. But there was something more at stake now. It wasn't just about her beauty line, her music, or her image. It was about taking down a system of power that had kept people like her, and countless others, under their control. I'm not backing down, Madison said, her voice resolute. We're going after them, full force. Later that night, as Madison prepared for her next public appearance, a press conference she knew would be critical, she looked at herself in the mirror. She wasn't just a rich girl anymore. She wasn't just a beauty mogul or a pianist. She was the one thing the people behind Elon Musk feared most, a threat. As she stepped out into the spotlight the next day, her confidence unwavering, Madison knew the battle was far from over. It had only just begun. The power play was on. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The press conference was set to be Madison Montgomery's boldest move yet. After weeks of digging into the shadowy figures behind Elon Musk's empire, Madison knew she couldn't afford to play it safe anymore. This was her moment, not just to expose the conspiracy but to take down the giants that had tried to control her. As she walked into the brightly lit conference room, the cameras flashed, and reporters crowded in front of her. She could feel the weight of their expectations, the pressure of thousands of eyes trained on her every move. But she was ready. This time, she wasn't the girl who had just challenged a billionaire to a duel. This time, she was the woman who would bring down an empire. Madison. Over here, one reporter called out, waving her microphone frantically. Madison, is it true that you've uncovered a conspiracy involving Elon Musk's financial backers? Another voice shouted. Madison took a deep breath, her hands steady as she walked up to the podium. The crowd quieted, the anticipation thick in the air. Thank you all for being here today, she began, her voice clear and unwavering. I stand before you not just as a businesswoman or an influencer, but as a person who has discovered something much bigger than myself. A system of control that has affected not just me, but countless others. The room fell silent, every ear eager to catch her next words. For months now, I've been the target of attacks, not because of my success or my creativity, but because I dared to challenge one of the most powerful men in the world, Elon Musk. What I've uncovered isn't just about one man's ego being bruised. It's about an entire network of individuals who control vast industries, manipulate public opinion, and pull the strings behind the scenes, Madison continued, her eyes scanning the room. The reporters were on the edge of their seats, their pens poised and cameras rolling. They were no longer just reporting the story, they were watching history unfold. Madison clicked the button on the remote in her hand, and a large screen behind her lit up with the first set of leaked emails. The room gasped in unison as the names of prominent figures in the tech, finance, and media industries appeared in bold letters. These are just some of the names involved in a covert operation designed to sabotage my brand, my reputation, and my very livelihood, she said, her voice calm but full of conviction. They've been operating in the shadows, pulling the strings of the public narrative, and trying to destroy everything I've worked for. The reporters were now buzzing with questions, their voices overlapping. Madison raised her hand, signaling for silence. I've made the decision to go public with this information because I believe it's time we stop hiding from the truth, she said. The people who are behind this, these giants, as I like to call them, are not above the law. They think they can control us, manipulate us, and shut us down. But I'm here to say, we are no longer their pawns. She paused for effect, letting the weight of her words sink in. A reporter stood up, microphone in hand. Madison, do you have proof that Elon Musk himself is involved in this conspiracy? Madison didn't flinch. She had anticipated this question. Elon Musk may have been the face of the attack, but he is not the mastermind. I've been investigating this for weeks, and what I've uncovered is far more insidious than anyone could have imagined. Musk is just one cog in the machine. The real players are the ones you never hear about, the investors, the power brokers who control everything behind closed doors. Another reporter spoke up. Are you suggesting that Musk is a puppet in this scheme? That he didn't know what was happening? Madison's eyes met the reporters, her gaze unwavering. What I'm saying is that Musk, like all of us, is a part of something bigger than himself. I can't speak to whether or not he was directly involved in every decision, but what I know is that he's a player in a much larger game. And I refuse to sit quietly while powerful people use their influence to tear down everything I've built. As Madison spoke, the weight of the situation grew heavier. This wasn't just about exposing a corporate conspiracy anymore. This was about calling out a system that had used its power for far too long without consequence. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every person who had ever been crushed under the weight of corporate greed. The more Madison revealed, the more she realized how much was at stake. She had already lost millions in sponsorships. Her company was under attack from every angle. But her resolve had never been stronger. This was her moment to take down the giants, and she wasn't going to back down. Hours after the press conference ended, Madison returned to her penthouse. The phone calls and messages were coming in non-stop, but she barely had the energy to respond. Her mind was racing, the enormity of what she had just done sinking in. She had made her move. She had exposed the network of players pulling the strings behind Elon Musk and the attack on her life. But the question remained, what would happen next? That evening, as Madison sat in her living room, there was a knock at the door. She didn't need to check the peephole to know who it was. "Chase," she called out, opening the door. He walked in, his face tired but determined. "Are you all right?" he asked, his eyes scanning her face for signs of exhaustion or stress. Madison smiled weakly. "I will be. I've made my move. Now we just have to see if it's enough." Chase nodded, his expression serious. "You've exposed them. There's no going back now." "I know," Madison replied, her gaze turning to the window, the city skyline illuminated by the glow of streetlights. "But I'm not afraid. I'm more than ready for what's coming next." Days passed, and the media storm only intensified. News outlets, social media influencers, and independent journalists were picking up the story, dissecting every detail of Madison's revelations. Elon Musk's silence on the matter was deafening. It was clear that he hadn't anticipated this level of resistance. But Madison wasn't the only one making waves. She started to see signs that others were beginning to challenge the system she had exposed. Investors were distancing themselves from Musk Incorporated, some publicly acknowledging the damage done by their involvement. Political figures were calling for investigations into the corporate manipulation of public figures. Madison's gamble had worked. She had sparked a revolution. But just as things seemed to be turning in her favor, a new threat emerged. In the midst of the chaos, a new player made themselves known, someone even more powerful than the corporate giants she had already confronted. And they weren't about to let Madison's victory stand without a fight. Madison had barely settled into her routine after the press conference when everything changed again. She was in her penthouse, sipping her coffee and scrolling through the endless stream of messages, when her phone buzzed. It was a notification from a news app, one she'd never thought would be relevant to her story. Breaking: mysterious billionaire to support Elon Musk amidst allegations. Madison blinked in disbelief. She hadn't heard of this new player. The article was brief, mentioning only that a billionaire investor with vast resources was now backing Musk, promising to shield him from the fallout of the scandal. There was no name, no details, just the insinuation that this new player had enough power to make things even more complicated. She leaned back, staring at the screen, her mind racing. A new threat? And one that was keeping its identity hidden? The thought sent a chill down her spine. This was no longer just about Musk. It wasn't even just about the corporate giants she'd exposed. It was about someone, or something, that was willing to step in and neutralize everything she'd worked for. "Who the hell is this?" she muttered under her breath. Chase called a few hours later, his voice tense. "Madison, you've seen the article, right? There's something strange going on here." "Yeah, I've seen it. Some anonymous billionaire is swooping in to protect Musk. But that's not even the worst part. They didn't give any names. No details. I've been digging, and I can't find a trace of who this person is. Not just that, Chase said, his voice lowering. I've heard rumors. Big ones. This isn't just some random investor. Some people are saying that this guy, or whoever it is, has connections to the very people you've been exposing. It's like they've been waiting for you to take the first step. Madison's heart skipped a beat. Was she really in deeper than she thought? Had someone been pulling strings from behind the scenes this whole time? Are you saying this new player has been orchestrating everything? That they've been waiting for me to expose them? She asked, her voice steady but edged with disbelief. It's possible. Maybe even probable, Chase replied. But I can't find anything concrete. Whoever this is, they're good at covering their tracks. If they're really connected to Musk and the people you've been digging into, then they're dangerous. And they have the power to wipe you out before you can even make another move. Madison took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She thought she had exposed the enemy. She thought she had taken control. But now, new, hidden player had entered the game, and she wasn't sure if she could outmaneuver them. The next few days felt like a blur. The media frenzy surrounding her press conference only intensified, with endless headlines and pundits discussing her accusations and the alleged conspiracy. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear: Madison had no answers. She didn't know who the billionaire was or what they were planning, and the uncertainty was eating away at her. Her father, Henry, called her into his office. He looked tired, his expression tight with concern. Madison, this is getting out of hand. We need to regroup and figure out our next move. This new player, they could be a serious threat to everything we've worked for. I know, Madison replied, her tone flat. But I don't know who they are, or how to fight back. You need to be careful, Henry said, his voice lower now. You've made powerful enemies, and whoever this new player is, they aren't going to sit back and let you keep exposing them. They'll come after you harder than before. Madison clenched her jaw. She wasn't about to let fear dictate her actions. I didn't come this far just to back down, Dad. If anything, this just makes me want to dig deeper. I'll find out who they are. I'll expose them just like I did Musk. Her father sighed, rubbing his temples. You don't understand how far this could go. These people can destroy lives. They'll do whatever it takes to protect their interests. If you want to stay in this game, you need to be prepared for what comes next. I'm ready, Madison said, her voice firm. That night, after a long day of strategizing with Chase and her team, Madison couldn't sleep. She sat by the window of her penthouse, watching the city below, its lights flickering like tiny stars. The weight of the situation pressed down on her, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't stop now. She had already risked too much. As the clock ticked past midnight, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. I know who you are. And I know what you're trying to do. But you're out of your depth, Madison. You don't want to make this a war. Madison froze, staring at the text. She didn't recognize the number. Was this the new player? Whoever they were watching her. They knew her every move. Who is this? She replied, her fingers shaking slightly as she typed. The response came almost immediately. You'll find out soon enough. But I suggest you stop before it's too late. This game isn't for the faint of heart. And you're about to find out just how dangerous it can be. Madison's heart raced. The message sent a shiver down her spine, but it also fueled something inside her. She wasn't going to back down. If anything, this only made her more determined to uncover the truth. The next morning, Madison and Chase were at her office, poring over the leaked documents once again. They were looking for something, anything, that could lead them to the mysterious billionaire. But with each passing hour, their frustration grew. It was like chasing shadows. We're not getting anywhere, Chase muttered, rubbing his eyes. This guy's a ghost. No records, no connections. It's like he doesn't even exist. Madison leaned back in her chair, trying to think. This was the pivotal moment. If she didn't figure out who was pulling the strings now, she might never have the chance again. As if on cue, her phone rang. The caller ID read, unknown. She answered immediately. Hello. A cold voice on the other end answered, Madison Montgomery. I hope you're ready for the consequences of your actions. The cold voice on the other end of the line sent a wave of unease through Madison's chest. Her grip on the phone tightened as she braced herself for what was coming next. Who is this? She demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. What do you want? The voice didn't flinch. Madison Montgomery. You've stirred a hornet's nest. And now you're about to find out what happens when you try to take down the wrong people. Her heart raced, but she didn't back down. You're hiding behind a phone call, but you don't scare me. Who are you really? For a moment, there was silence on the other end, a soft click as if someone was considering their next words. Then the voice came again, quieter, but with an edge of menace. You've already met the surface players, the ones you thought were pulling the strings. But I'm the one who pulls their strings. You've dug too deep, and now I'm coming for you. Madison's mind was spinning, trying to make sense of the words. A puppet master? Someone even higher up than Elon Musk and the corporate giants she had already exposed. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just some anonymous billionaire protecting Musk. This was the person who controlled everything. The mastermind behind the whole operation. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of fear in her chest. I don't want anything from you, the voice replied. I'm just letting you know that you've crossed a line. And there's no going back now. With that, the line went dead. Chase was already waiting for her when she got off the phone. He could tell by the look on her face that something had shifted. Who was that? It was him, Madison said, her voice strained. The one who's been pulling the strings. The one behind the people I've been exposing. Chase raised an eyebrow. A puppet master? Madison nodded. Exactly. This is bigger than Musk, bigger than anything I've imagined. Someone with enough power to control not just the tech world, but everything. And now, they're coming for me. The weight of her words hung heavy in the room. Chase's face hardened with concern. What do we do now? Madison paused, her mind racing. This wasn't just a war over reputation anymore. It was a fight for her life. Whoever this person was, they were dangerous. They had power that Madison couldn't even begin to comprehend. We go after them, Madison said, her voice firm. We expose them. I'm not backing down. Chase hesitated. Madison, this could be more than you bargained for. You're up against someone who controls everything, the media, the money, the power. This isn't just about business anymore. This is about survival. I know, she said, meeting his gaze. But if I stop now, everything I've fought for will be for nothing. I have to finish this. For me. For everyone who's been screwed over by these people. For the next few days, Madison threw herself into her investigation, determined to uncover every shred of information about this mysterious puppet master. But no matter how deep she dug, the answers seemed to slip through her fingers. Every lead turned cold. Every connection seemed to go nowhere. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone close, was watching her every move. Then, one evening, as she sifted through documents in her office, she came across something that made her stop dead in her tracks. It was an old financial record, one that seemed innocuous at first glance. But as she traced the numbers back, she noticed something strange. There, buried deep in the fine print, was a name. A name she recognized immediately. It was her father's. Madison's pulse quickened as she scanned the document again, her mind reeling. How was her father connected to this? She had always known that Henry Montgomery was a powerful man, but she had no idea that his financial dealings could be linked to something this dark. The next morning, Madison confronted her father. They were sitting in his office, the same office that had always felt like a safe haven. But now, the walls seemed to close in on her. "Dad, what is this?" she asked, slamming the financial document down onto his desk. "What's your connection to this person? Why is your name tied to all of this?" Henry's face drained of color. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just stared at the document, his fingers trembling slightly as he reached for it. This isn't what you think," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "Madison, you've got to understand. I never wanted you to get involved in this." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Madison shouted, her voice rising with frustration. "You knew what was going on, and you let me walk right into it." Her father's expression softened, but the pain in his eyes was undeniable. "It wasn't that simple. I tried to protect you, but I was in too deep. I was forced into this, by people more powerful than you or me. I didn't want you to find out. I didn't want you to get caught up in it." Madison stepped back, her mind racing. Her own father, someone she had always trusted, was part of this web of corruption. He had been involved with the very people who had tried to destroy her. "Dad, you're telling me you've been working with them this whole time?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. "No," Henry said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know. I didn't know about him, the man pulling the strings. But once I found out, it was too late. I couldn't get out." The weight of his words hit her hard. Her father had been trapped. The man who had always been her protector, the one she had looked up to, had been ensnared by the very system she had vowed to tear down. "I need to fix this," Henry said, his voice quiet but urgent. "I can help you. I can give you information you need to expose him. But you need to trust me, Madison." As Madison processed everything, a new understanding began to form. This wasn't just a fight against powerful men who hid behind their wealth and influence. This was about unmasking a system that had controlled everything, from the people she trusted to the ones who sought to destroy her. And now, with her father's help, Madison had a chance to finally take down the puppet master. But there was one thing she knew for sure: whoever this new player was, they. The room felt smaller as Madison stood facing her father, the weight of the truth pressing down on both of them. The man who had always been her rock, the one who had taught her how to fight for what she believed in, was now the very person she was fighting against. Or, at least, someone who had been trapped by the system she had sworn to take down. Her father's voice trembled, but there was an urgency to it. "Madison, I'm telling you, you don't understand the full picture. This isn't just about power or money. This is about survival. There are people who won't hesitate to destroy everything if it means protecting themselves. I didn't have a choice." Madison's mind raced. Her heart was torn. She had always trusted her father. He had been the one to guide her, to show her the ropes of the business world. But now, it felt as though everything had been built on a lie. "You didn't have a choice?" she asked, her voice shaking with anger. "You mean to tell me that you were forced into this? That you didn't have any control over your own actions?" Henry's face hardened. "It's not that simple, Madison. The people I got involved with, they're dangerous. When you're dealing with forces that can destroy everything you've worked for, you do what you have to. You make sacrifices. You make deals. It wasn't a choice, it was a necessity." Madison stood there, frozen in disbelief. Was she really hearing this? Was this the man she had trusted her whole life? The man who had taught her to stand up for what was right? She wanted to yell, to tell him that he was wrong, that there was always a choice. But she didn't. She just couldn't. Because a part of her understood, he was right. This wasn't a game. This wasn't some business rivalry. The stakes were far higher than she had ever imagined. And her father had been forced to play by the rules of a game she hadn't even known existed. The days that followed felt like a blur. Madison tried to process everything her father had told her, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same thing: her father, the man she had looked up to, the man who had protected her, had been complicit in a system of corruption that spanned far beyond anything she had ever imagined. And then there was the phone call. The one that came late that night, when Madison was alone in her penthouse, trying to make sense of the mess her life had become. It was from Chase. "Madison, I don't know how to tell you this," he said, his voice sounding strained. "But there's been a major breach. Someone leaked your father's involvement in everything. The press is already running with it. It's all over the news." Madison's stomach dropped. She felt like she had just been hit by a truck. "What do you mean, leaked? How could they have?" "I don't know. But they've got the evidence. Pictures, financial records. Everything. It's bad, Madison. Your father's name is out there now. And it's only a matter of time before people start connecting the dots." Madison was paralyzed, her mind spinning. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Her father had already been living in the shadows, trying to protect her from the truth. But now, that truth was out there for the world to see. "Chase," she whispered, "this wasn't supposed to be the way. I didn't want this for him. I didn't want to tear apart everything he worked for." "I know," Chase said softly. "But the damage is done. The question now is what you're going to do about it. You've got two choices: fight back, or let this destroy everything you've worked for. This is bigger than you and your father now. You've got to make a move." Madison could hear the urgency in Chase's voice. But what could she do? She had already exposed so much, so many powerful people, yet now, she was the one being exposed. The media would tear her apart. The public would turn on her. She was standing at a crossroads, and every path felt like a dead end. The next morning, Madison's phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages, notifications, calls. The leak had exploded, and every news outlet was covering the story. Her father's face was splashed across headlines, and soon, Madison's name followed. The rich girl who dared to expose the elite was plastered everywhere. The press, which had once hailed her as a hero, now turned on her like a pack of wolves. She couldn't avoid the truth anymore. The betrayal was out in the open. And it wasn't just her father's name that was in the spotlight, it was her entire life. The life she had built was now teetering on the edge of collapse. The world didn't care about her intentions. It didn't care about the battles she had fought. All they cared about was the scandal. But Madison wasn't one to back down. Not this time. She wouldn't let her father's mistakes be her undoing. She gathered her team, including Chase, in her office that afternoon. The pressure was suffocating, but there was one thing she knew: she wasn't going to let the media dictate her future. "I've been thinking," she said, standing in front of her team. "We can't just let this lie. We've exposed the corruption, but now, it's time to take control of the narrative. We're going to turn this around." Chase looked at her, concern written on his face. "Are you sure? This is huge, Madison. People are going to think you're part of the problem. This is about more than just your father's involvement. This is about the trust people had in you. You've got to be careful." Madison's eyes burned with determination. "I know what I'm doing. I didn't come this far to quit now. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to expose who's really behind all of this. This isn't just about me or my father, it's about everyone they've hurt along the way." She could see the doubt in her team's eyes, but there was no turning back now. The world was watching. And if she was going to lose everything, she would at least go down fighting. Later that day, Madison released a statement. It wasn't a defense. It wasn't an apology. It was a declaration of war. "I am not afraid of the truth," she said in the video. I have always fought for what's right, and I will continue to do so. The world will know who's really pulling the strings. I will expose every last one of them, no matter the cost. As Madison sat back in her office, watching the storm unfold, one thing became clear: this wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for everything she had ever believed in. The battle was no longer just about exposing the powerful elite. It was about reclaiming her life. The press storm had only just begun to swell, but Madison had already made up her mind: she wasn't going to cower in the face of this scandal. As the hours passed, her social media had exploded, but instead of retreating, she leaned in. This was her moment to turn everything around. If the world thought they had her cornered, they were wrong. She wasn't a victim. She was a fighter. The next morning, she woke up to her phone buzzing incessantly. Notifications from news outlets, alerts about new articles, her name was everywhere. The world was watching her, and they were waiting for her to crumble. But Madison wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. "Chase," she said, looking up from her phone as he entered her penthouse. "We're taking control of the narrative." Chase raised an eyebrow, glancing at the array of notifications that filled her screen. "You sure about that? The whole world thinks your father is the kingpin behind all this. They're connecting your name to his." "I know what they're saying," Madison replied, standing up and walking toward the window, where she could see the sprawling city skyline. "But this is bigger than just me. We're going to dig deeper, Chase. Find the real culprits. Whoever's been pulling the strings, whoever's been manipulating my father and everyone else, they won't get away with it." Chase nodded, the same grim determination in his eyes. "And how do you plan to do that? The press already has you pinned as part of the scandal." "I'm going to show the world I'm not part of the problem," she said, her voice unwavering. "I'm going to take them down. I'll find the puppeteers behind all of this. And when I do, I'll expose them." Madison knew the next steps would be crucial. She couldn't afford to make a misstep, not now, when her every move was being scrutinized. The first thing she did was contact the investigative journalists she had worked with before. The kind of people who weren't afraid to follow the leads that others ignored. They would be her eyes and ears in this battle. "We need to get to the bottom of this, fast," she told them. "My father might be a part of this, but I know he's not the top player. We need to find out who really controls everything, who's been pulling the strings from behind the curtain." She paused for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. "If we expose them, we expose the entire system. The real criminals. The ones who have been hiding in plain sight." The journalists agreed, and they immediately began combing through records, sources, and connections. Madison knew this was just the beginning. They had to be smart, every move had to be precise. Meanwhile, the media frenzy continued to grow. Madison's name appeared on every major news outlet, often paired with her father's. The connections between them were being drawn in sensational headlines. They painted her as part of the corruption. It was a gut punch every time she saw her face on a tabloid, but she kept her focus. This wasn't about public opinion anymore. This was about uncovering the truth. The media's narrative was one of betrayal. They had all but sentenced her. But in Madison's mind, they were wrong. She wasn't a villain in this story. She was a whistleblower. A fighter. A few days passed, and Madison and her team began to piece together more information. The journalists had uncovered something crucial, a list of names that kept appearing in connection with her father's financial dealings. These names weren't just high-profile businesspeople. They were the ones who controlled the flow of money in ways Madison had never fully understood. The deeper she dug, the clearer it became: her father had been part of a much larger network, a network that went far beyond mere corporate greed. "There's something else," one of the journalists called her late one night. "We found a connection between the people you're investigating and a shadowy group of elites. It's hard to trace, but there's evidence that they've been involved in several high-stakes corporate takeovers over the last decade." They're known for getting rid of anyone who stands in their way. Madison's heart raced. Who are they? The journalist hesitated, as though unsure if he should say the name aloud. They call themselves the Collective. And if they're involved, it's bigger than you think. These people operate in the shadows, pulling strings in global markets, politics, and tech industries. If your father was involved with them, he wasn't just in over his head, he was part of a much larger game. Madison swallowed hard. The Collective, the name alone sent chills down her spine. These were the people who controlled everything. The true puppet masters. If she was going to expose them, she had to be smarter than ever. No one would be safe until she took them down. The next day, Madison met with Chase and her closest allies. There was no turning back now. The game had changed. She was no longer just fighting for her reputation or for her father's redemption. She was taking on the Collective, a secretive group of people whose power stretched far beyond what anyone could comprehend. We're not going to go public with this just yet, Madison said, her voice steady despite the rising tension in the room. We need to move carefully. This group doesn't just play by the rules. They make the rules. Chase nodded, his face serious. What's our next step? I'm going to reach out to someone who's been tracking their movements for years, she said, pacing in front of them. A former insider who left the Collective. If we can get to him, he'll be the key to everything. But we need to find him first. He's been off the grid for a while now. The room fell silent as Madison's words sank in. Finding this man would be no easy feat, but if he could provide them with the answers they needed, they might have a shot at finally bringing the Collective to light. Later that night, Madison sat alone in her office, staring at the city lights outside her window. The weight of the decisions ahead of her hung over her. She wasn't just fighting for her life anymore, she was fighting for everyone who had been caught in the crossfire of this system. And with every passing minute, the Collective was getting closer to realizing that she was coming for them. As the phone buzzed in her hand, Madison's fingers hesitated. She was about to make a move that would change everything. But she couldn't stop now. Not when the stakes were this high. Madison had never felt more alive, or more terrified, than she did in the moments leading up to her meeting with the former Collective insider. This was no ordinary lead. It was a thread that, if pulled, could unravel the entire operation. She stared at the address on her phone, a small, nondescript building tucked away in a quieter part of the city. It looked like nothing. Yet everything told her this was where she would find the answers that could destroy the Collective. Are you sure this is a good idea? Chase's voice broke her focus as he leaned over her shoulder, his eyes scanning the address. I have no choice, she replied, her voice tight with determination. If he's the key to bringing them down, I'm not going to let fear stop me now. Chase hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Just remember, this guy's been off the grid for years. He could be dangerous, or worse, he could be leading us into a trap. I know what I'm doing, she said, her voice steady. But the truth was, she wasn't entirely sure. The closer she got to the heart of the operation, the more she realized how many lives were at stake, her own, her father's, and the lives of everyone caught in the wake of the Collective's influence. The building was tucked between a dilapidated hardware store and a small, shuttered cafe. Madison's shoes clicked against the pavement as she approached, and with each step, the feeling of unease grew. She wasn't just hunting down a rogue insider, she was venturing into the unknown. The door opened as if on cue, revealing a small, dimly lit hallway. A single light bulb flickered overhead, casting a shadow on the walls. Madison's heart thudded in her chest. She could hear the distant hum of traffic, the only noise that seemed to break the oppressive silence of the space. Madison, a voice called from the darkness. She froze, eyes darting around. The voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, familiar, almost. A figure emerged from the shadows, and for a moment, Madison thought she saw a ghost. The man standing before her was middle-aged, with sharp features and a kind of weariness in his eyes that only came from a life lived in the shadows. "You're the one they sent?" he asked, his tone more curious than confrontational. Madison stepped forward, her heart racing. "I'm Madison Hayes. I'm looking for answers. I need to know about the collective." The man smiled a tight-lipped smile, a knowing glint in his eyes. "You're looking to expose them, huh? You think you're ready for that?" "I don't have a choice," she said, her voice firm. "I'm not backing down." The man regarded her for a long moment, his eyes scanning her face, as if evaluating whether she was truly prepared for what she was about to get involved in. Finally, he spoke again. "All right. Come inside." The inside of the building was even more barren than the hallway had suggested. A few chairs, a table, and a stack of old newspapers made up the sparse decor. It felt as though this man had lived in this space for years, shut off from the world. He motioned for her to sit as he took a chair across from her. "I wasn't expecting a visit from someone like you," he said, pouring himself a drink from a bottle on the table. "I assumed you were just another spoiled rich kid playing at being a hero. But I can see now, you're serious." Madison sat down, her hands clenched in her lap. "I've seen enough to know that I have to stop them. They're bigger than anything I imagined. I need to understand who's behind it all. How do they operate?" The man took a sip from his glass and leaned back in his chair. "It's not simple. The collective isn't some corporate boardroom. They're a network. They have their fingers in everything: finance, politics, media, tech. They manipulate things from behind the scenes, pulling the strings on a global scale. And trust me when I say, they don't hesitate to eliminate anyone who stands in their way." Madison swallowed hard. She wasn't naive, she knew the kind of people she was dealing with. But hearing it from someone who had lived it, who had seen firsthand how dangerous these people could be, made her stomach churn. "How did you get out?" she asked quietly. "How did you walk away from that?" The man's face darkened. "It wasn't easy. I had to fake my own death, disappear from the world entirely. And even then, I've never truly been free. They have eyes everywhere. They always know where you are. But I've been laying low, watching the world burn from the sidelines." His eyes met hers, intense and unwavering. "And now you're here, hoping you can stop them. You really think you can take down the collective? They'll do everything in their power to crush you, and anyone you care about." Madison didn't flinch. "I have to try. If I don't, they'll just keep ruining people's lives." The man studied her for a moment longer before nodding. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But you need to understand one thing: you're not dealing with ordinary people. These are the elites. The ones who pull the strings of governments, the ones who control the banks and the media. If you think you're just going to expose them and walk away untouched, you're wrong." Madison's pulse quickened, but she held his gaze. "Then teach me. Show me how to take them down." He leaned forward. "All right, I'll help you. But know this: the deeper you go, the more dangerous it becomes. And you may not make it out alive." As they began discussing the next steps, methods of gathering intel, who to trust, and how to avoid the many traps that the collective had set for people like her, Madison's mind raced. This wasn't just about exposing her father's involvement anymore. This was about taking on a global network of power brokers who would stop at nothing to maintain control. She had no illusions now. This would be a fight like no other. And as the man handed her a set of encrypted files, he warned her one final time: "You don't want to know how far they'll go to keep their secrets. But if you're in this, you'd better be ready for the storm." Madison's hands shook as she took the files. There was no going back now. The weight of the encrypted files in Madison's hands felt heavier with each passing second. They weren't just pieces of information, they were her key to unraveling the collective, to toppling an empire of power and corruption that had stayed hidden for too long. But the deeper she went, the more dangerous the game became. She could feel it in her bones, the stakes were higher than ever. The following days were a blur of meetings, late nights, and desperate attempts to decode the information she had received. The files contained names, dates, transactions, everything that linked the collective to corrupt political figures, major financial institutions, and even tech moguls who controlled the flow of information. It was like a spider's web, intricate and far-reaching. Chase had become more involved than ever. He had always been a trustworthy ally, but even he couldn't hide his concerns. As they sat in Madison's penthouse, going over the information, he furrowed his brow. "Madison, this is bigger than we thought. These names, they're not just corporate executives. They're people with enough power to make governments bend to their will." Madison didn't look up from the screen. "I know. That's why we have to move quickly. We expose them now, before they can close ranks." "But who do we even trust?" Chase asked. "There's no one left who hasn't been compromised by them. We're walking a tightrope here, and one wrong move could bring it all crashing down." She met his gaze, eyes steely. "That's exactly why we have to strike first. The collective has had their time. Now, it's ours." Later that night, Madison sat in front of her computer, eyes scanning the details and the files. She had pinpointed a few key players, people who were at the very center of the collective. But she needed more, specifics, evidence that would be airtight and irrefutable. If they were going to take down such a vast operation, they needed something big, something that no amount of money or influence could silence. And then she found it. A series of wire transfers. They were disguised well, buried beneath layers of fake companies and shell corporations, but Madison's experience in the world of high finance had taught her how to read between the lines. The transfers were going to a private island in the Caribbean, an island that was rumored to be the headquarters of the collective. "Chase!" Madison called out, standing up abruptly. "I found it. We have a location." Chase was by her side in an instant, looking over her shoulder at the screen. His eyes widened. "Are you sure? This could be it, their headquarters." "I'm sure," she said, her pulse quickening. "This is it. We go there. We get in, we get the evidence, and we get out. No one will ever be able to touch us again." Chase shook his head, still processing the gravity of it. "Madison, this is dangerous. If they know we're coming, we won't make it out. We need to think this through." But Madison was already grabbing her bag, heading for the door. "We don't have time to think. We move now." The next morning, they were on a private jet, flying toward the Caribbean island where the heart of the collective was hidden. Madison had everything planned down to the last detail. They had arranged for a fake identity for her and Chase, had covered their tracks as best as they could. The jet flew under the radar, literally and figuratively. But even as they neared their destination, Madison felt the cold gnaw of uncertainty. Was this really the right move? The closer they got to the collective stronghold, the more she realized how deeply embedded the group was in the fabric of society. These were the kind of people who had no qualms about going to extreme lengths to protect their interests. She had no idea how far they would go to stop her. "Are you ready?" Chase asked, pulling her out of her thoughts. "I don't have a choice," Madison replied, her voice steady. "We have to do this." Landing in the early morning light, they were immediately met by a sleek, black SUV that whisked them away to a remote villa. The island was lush and beautiful, far more so than she had expected. But the beauty of the place was overshadowed by the sense of danger that lurked beneath the surface. The island wasn't just a paradise, it was a fortress. They were given a quick briefing by a local contact who was somehow tied to the underground network of resistance fighters who had been trying to take down the collective for years. The contact had a scar on his cheek, a reminder of the many battles fought in the shadows. "You're here to expose them, right?" he asked, his voice low and grave. "You'll have to be careful. The people you're dealing with aren't just business people, they're connected to governments, to law enforcement, to the very institutions that are supposed to protect you. They control everything here. Madison nodded, her resolve hardening. We're not backing down. We're taking them down. As the sun began to set, they approached the heart of the island, a heavily guarded compound, surrounded by high walls and armed security. Madison's stomach twisted. This was it. The first strike in their war against the collective. Stick to the plan, Chase said as they crouched behind a cluster of palm trees, watching the compound from a distance. We go in, we find the evidence, and we leave before they even know we were here. Madison gave him a nod. Let's do this. They moved swiftly, expertly avoiding the guards and surveillance cameras as they infiltrated the compound. The whole operation felt surreal, the adrenaline, the urgency, the knowledge that at any moment they could be caught. And then they found it. A vault, a room filled with documents, files, and computers that held the secrets of the collective. Madison's heart raced as she began downloading everything she could, every piece of evidence that would expose them. Just as she finished, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Time to go, Chase hissed, grabbing her arm. They sprinted out of the vault, their hearts pounding as they raced back to the entrance. But they weren't fast enough. The alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the compound as guards flooded the area. They had been discovered. Go! Madison screamed, shoving Chase ahead of her. But it was too late. The alarm screamed through the compound like a living creature in pain, and the world around Madison exploded into chaos. Red lights flashed, casting a sinister glow over the walls as guards rushed to their positions. The sound of their boots pounding against the concrete floor echoed, growing louder with every passing. Madison's heart pounded in her chest as she grabbed Chase's hand, pulling him forward. The data, the files they had stolen from the collective, were heavy in her bag, each step a reminder of just how much was at stake. She couldn't let them get caught. Not now. Not after coming this far. Keep moving, she hissed, urging Chase forward. They sprinted down the narrow corridor, the footsteps behind them growing louder. Madison's breath came in ragged gasps, but she kept her eyes fixed ahead, focusing on the path they had memorized. The compound was a maze of hallways and stairwells, but they had planned for this. They had to get out. Chase glanced over his shoulder. They're right behind us. Don't look back. Madison yelled, adrenaline surging through her veins. Just keep running. They reached the door that led outside, the one that would get them closer to their escape. But just as they reached it, a burst of gunfire rang out, the sound of bullets slamming into the wall beside them. Get down! Madison shouted, pulling Chase into the shadows. They crouched behind a stack of crates, their hearts racing. The guards had caught up, and now the hunt was on. The only thing standing between them and freedom was a series of armed men, their weapons trained on the exit. Madison, Chase whispered urgently. We need to get to the boat. If we can make it there, we'll be safe. The boat. It was their only chance. The small, inconspicuous vessel that had been waiting for them on the other side of the island. But the path to it was lined with guards, and even worse, security systems that could track their every move. Are you ready for this? Madison asked, eyes meeting his. Chase's expression was grim, but there was no hesitation in his voice. We don't have a choice. They darted from their hiding spot, running as fast as they could toward the back exit. The air was thick with the sound of gunfire, but Madison had no time to be afraid. She only had one focus, getting to the boat. As they approached the edge of the compound, they ducked into a row of tall, swaying palm trees. The guards were closing in, and Madison could feel the sweat dripping down her back. They had no cover left, and the boat felt miles away. But then, she saw it. A small group of resistance fighters, men and women who had once fought alongside the insider they had met earlier, were waiting in the shadows. They had managed to break through the outer defenses and were holding off the guards long enough for Madison and Chase to escape. "We're not leaving you behind," Chase shouted as he pulled Madison forward, ready to fight if necessary. "No time," one of the resistance fighters called out. "We hold them off, you make it to the boat. Go now." Without another word, Madison and Chase turned and ran, their feet pounding against the sand as they neared the beach. The boat, a simple, low-profile vessel, was waiting for them just offshore, its engine already running. But just as they were about to reach the water, a guard appeared in their path. The man raised his weapon, ready to fire. "Move!" Madison shouted, shoving Chase toward the boat. She wasn't going to let anything stop them now. Without thinking, she reached for the small, concealed pistol she had tucked into her waistband. In one fluid motion, she drew the weapon and aimed it at the guard, her hand steady despite the panic coursing through her veins. The shot rang out, a single, piercing sound in the quiet of the night. The guard crumpled to the ground, his weapon falling from his hand. Madison didn't wait to see if he was alive, she was already moving, her eyes locked on the boat. "Come on," she yelled to Chase, urgency in her voice. He didn't hesitate. They reached the water's edge, where the boat bobbed in the dark water. The engine revved as the driver, one of the resistance fighters, pulled them aboard. The moment they were on the boat, it lurched into motion. Madison could feel the weight of the moment, of everything that had happened in the past hours, crashing down on her. They had made it out. But this was only the beginning. As they sped away from the island, the distant sound of sirens and gunfire faded behind them. The boat cut through the water, leaving the island, and the nightmare, behind. But even as the waves splashed against the sides of the boat, Madison knew they weren't truly safe yet. They had the evidence, yes. But the collective was vast. Their reach was infinite. There was no hiding from them for long. Chase turned to her, his face grim but relieved. "We did it. We're out. But now, what happens next?" Madison looked at the dark horizon, the faint outline of the island barely visible in the distance. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, an expanse that seemed to represent all the unknowns that lay ahead. "We take them down," she said, her voice filled with determination. "This isn't over. We're just getting started." As the boat sped toward safety, the stars overhead seemed to shine a little brighter. Madison's resolve had never been stronger. She had taken the first step in a fight that would change the world, but she knew the real battle was just beginning. The boat ride to the mainland had been silent, the only sounds being the soft hum of the engine and the rhythmic lapping of the water against the sides of the vessel. Madison sat at the bow, staring out over the dark ocean, her thoughts swirling. They had narrowly escaped the collective's grip, but she knew the hardest part was still ahead. The files they had taken were explosive, enough to bring down governments, corporations, and maybe even the tech giants like Elon Musk who were tied to the far-reaching web of corruption. But now, more than ever, she realized just how much she had underestimated the collective. They had made her an enemy, but now they had to deal with a different, more dangerous foe, one who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. She wasn't just fighting against an organization now, she was fighting against the entire system they had spent decades building. When the boat finally hit the shore, the team disembarked swiftly, meeting up with their contact who had arranged safe houses and getaway vehicles. Madison glanced around, her nerves on edge. Even though they had successfully escaped the island, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being watched. The feeling of being hunted was something she knew all too well by now. Chase was close by, his eyes scanning their surroundings as they walked toward the waiting cars. "We need to lay low for a while," he said, his voice low and steady. "But we can't hide forever. Once they realize we've got the data, it won't be long before they come after us." Madison nodded, her mind already racing with a plan. "We have to use this information wisely. We can't just hand it over to the authorities, not yet. We need to make sure we're ready to expose everything before we let it out into the open." As they drove through the quiet streets of the city, Madison pulled out the encrypted files. She began scanning through the contents again, looking for anything she had missed before. But then something caught her eye. A name. Chase, she said, her voice rising with alarm. Look at this. Chase leaned over, squinting at the screen. His eyes widened in recognition. No. It can't be. It was the name of a man who had been a constant presence in the tech world for years. The collective had clearly done business with him, but what was far more disturbing was the connection to someone even more powerful, Elon Musk. The very man who had inadvertently sparked their entire journey. The realization hit Madison like a freight train. She had suspected that Musk's influence reached far beyond what the public knew, but now she had the proof. The collective wasn't just a rogue group of criminals, it was a network built on the foundation of the most powerful people in the world. Musk's involvement wasn't just incidental, it was integral. If Musk is involved, this goes beyond just a corrupt organization, Madison murmured. This is global. This is world domination. Chase's face turned pale. We're in way deeper than I thought. We need to confront him, Madison said, more to herself than to Chase. We need to find out how deep his connection goes, and why the collective is using him. He's the key. They knew they needed to get to Musk. But how? He was untouchable, surrounded by a fortress of security and media scrutiny. But that was part of his charm, right? Everyone loved Elon Musk. He was the genius who was going to save humanity, who was bringing about the future with his space exploration and electric cars. But Madison knew better. The man behind the curtain wasn't always the person he appeared to be. Are you sure this is the right move? Chase asked, his voice uncertain. He's not just a tech billionaire. He's an empire in himself. Going after Musk might be more dangerous than we realize. Madison met his gaze. I know what I'm doing, Chase. The collective has a global reach, but Musk is the one who can bring it all crashing down. If we can get to him, we can take down everything he's built. He's our ticket to ending this once and for all. Chase sighed, clearly torn, but nodded. I hope you know what you're doing. Madison didn't have time to second-guess herself. If they were going to go after Musk, they had to move fast. She needed leverage. The kind of leverage that would make Musk sit up and take notice, something that would make him realize that his own empire could come crumbling down if he didn't cooperate. As they began plotting their next move, Madison's phone buzzed. A new message. She opened it, expecting it to be from one of the contacts they had used to coordinate the escape. But when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. It was a message from someone she never thought she'd hear from again. Elon Musk. I know what you're trying to do. But be careful, Madison. You have no idea what you're dealing with. You're already in too deep, and there's no going back. If you think you can take down the collective, think again. Madison stared at the message for a long moment, her hands gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. He had known all along. From the moment she had challenged him to a piano duel, he had been watching her, studying her every move. It was no longer just a game. Elon Musk wasn't just a tech mogul. He was a force to be reckoned with, and he had his eyes trained firmly on her. The moment she had set foot in his world, the rules had changed. Chase, Madison said, her voice cold, I think we just made our first real mistake. He raised an eyebrow, not fully understanding. Madison looked out the window, her gaze hardening as she processed the implications of Musk's message. We're not just fighting the collective. We're fighting him now. And he's not going down without a fight. The game had changed, and it was clear that the next phase of their mission was going to be far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Madison's pulse raced as she stared at her phone. Elon Musk's cryptic message was still burned into her mind, you're already in too deep, and there's no going back. He wasn't just threatening her, he was warning her. Warning her that she had no idea what kind of game she was playing. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized just how true that was. She hadn't been ready for this. The stakes were higher than she could have imagined. But there was no turning back now. She had made her move, and now she had to finish what she had started. Chase sat across from her, his eyes narrowing as he studied the message. So, Musk is watching us. We're not just dealing with the collective anymore, but with a man who can manipulate the entire world. Madison didn't reply immediately. Instead, she scrolled through the rest of the encrypted files they had taken from the collective. There were names, dates, places, all evidence of the corruption that ran deep in the world's most powerful industries. But as her eyes scanned the information, a new realization dawned on her. This isn't just about taking down the collective, she said, her voice tense. This is about exposing the whole system. Musk is part of it. If we go after him, we're not just targeting a tech mogul. We're targeting an entire network of power and influence. Chase leaned back in his chair, his face grim. Which means we need a plan. A real plan, Madison. We can't just rush in blindly. Musk will have eyes everywhere. For the next few hours, the two of them strategized, poring over the data they had gathered. The more they learned about Musk's connections, the more daunting the task seemed. It wasn't just his business ventures in electric vehicles and space travel. Musk's influence stretched across governments, military contracts, and even into the highest echelons of global finance. The collective had deep ties to him, and now, Madison and Chase were entangled in a web they could barely begin to understand. But despite the odds, there was no going back. They had to confront Musk, and they had to do it soon. The clock was ticking, and every moment they wasted brought them closer to being found. The plan was simple, in theory: infiltrate Musk's private estate, get inside his mind, and force him to reveal the extent of his involvement with the collective. But as Madison and Chase prepared to execute it, they knew it was anything but simple. They had to move quickly and efficiently. One wrong step, one slip-up, and the entire operation would come crashing down. Musk was known for his eccentricities and paranoia, and his security was second to none. The estate was a fortress, both physically and digitally. They'd need to disable security systems, hack through layers of firewalls, and gain access to restricted areas, all while avoiding detection. As the sun began to set, Madison and Chase found themselves standing in front of a nondescript building on the outskirts of town. It looked like a safe house, but inside, it was anything but. They had brought in a team of skilled hackers, former military personnel, and engineers who would assist in executing their plan. "This is it," Madison said, looking around at the team. "Once we step inside Musk's compound, there's no going back. We do this right, or we don't do it at all." Everyone nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'm not sure what Musk is expecting," Chase added. "But we have to assume he's prepared for this." Madison's gaze hardened. "He might think he's prepared, but he doesn't know what we've got. The collective is underestimating us. They made a mistake by going after us, and now they're going to pay." They worked through the night, coordinating with their inside sources and fine-tuning their approach. As dawn broke, they were ready. The moment had come. The team split into smaller groups, each with a specific task. Madison and Chase were to enter the mansion itself, while the rest of the team would disable external cameras and provide technical support. They would have a narrow window of time to get inside, locate Musk, and confront him with the evidence they had. As they approached the gates of Musk's estate, Madison's heart rate quickened. The mansion loomed ahead like a fortress, its high walls and advanced security systems making it clear that Musk was not to be underestimated. But that didn't matter now. They had no choice but to go forward. Madison and Chase made their way through a series of underground tunnels, part of the mansion's extensive security infrastructure. Once they reached the inner perimeter, it was time to act. The team's hacking unit had already gained access to the security feeds, allowing them to slip past guards undetected. But it wasn't long before they reached a new set of challenges. Musk's estate wasn't just a mansion, it was a high-tech fortress, with layers upon layers of security. The walls were lined with sensors, motion detectors, and infrared cameras. To get inside undetected would take everything they had. "You ready for this?" Chase whispered, his voice low as they crouched in a hidden alcove. Madison nodded, her jaw set in determination. "We don't have a choice." With a series of quiet movements, the two of them breached the security system. They disarmed the motion detectors, cracked the biometric locks, and finally made their way inside. The mansion was vast, an elegant blend of cutting-edge technology and opulent design. It was clear that every inch of the building had been designed with one thing in mind: control. Nothing was left to chance. As they moved deeper into the mansion, they could hear faint sounds, voices, footsteps, the hum of machinery. They were getting closer to their goal. Musk's office was just ahead. It was the heart of his empire, and it was where they would confront him. As they neared the door to Musk's private study, Madison stopped. She felt a chill run down her spine, as though something was wrong. "This is it," she whispered. "Get ready." With a deep breath, she pushed open the door. The office was dark, lit only by the glow of a few monitors. But there, standing by the desk, was Elon Musk. His expression was unreadable as he turned to face them. "So, you've made it this far," he said, his voice cold and calculating. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Madison stepped forward, her resolve stronger than ever. "We're not here to play games, Musk. We know what you've been doing. It ends now." Musk smirked, a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "You think you can take me down? You're not even close to understanding the game you're playing." The tension in the room was palpable. Elon Musk stood behind his sleek, modern desk, looking more like a chess master than the tech mogul Madison had once admired. His fingers lightly tapped the surface of the desk as he regarded her with cold amusement. His expression was almost casual, as though he'd been expecting her all along. Madison's heart pounded, but she held her ground. She couldn't afford to show weakness now, not when she was so close. They had come this far, through lies, danger, and betrayal, and now it was time to bring him down. Chase stood at her side, eyes sharp, ready for whatever Musk threw their way. But even he seemed uneasy, sensing that something was off. There was no way a man like Musk would be caught off guard by them. He was always 10 steps ahead. "You've come all this way to confront me," Musk said, his voice smooth, almost calculating. "But you're out of your depth, Madison. This game, this war you think you're fighting, has already been decided. And you're not even on the right side." Madison's gaze never wavered. "You're the one who's been hiding behind a facade of genius, Musk. You and the collective, all your connections, your manipulations. You can't run from this forever. We know everything." Musk's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't a warm one. "You think the collective is the real problem here? You're mistaken. I'm the one who built it all, yes. But you're not ready to face what that means." Madison's mind raced. There it was again, this underlying threat that Musk had built something even bigger, more insidious than she had realized. She'd suspected he was more than just a player in the game. But now, standing in front of him, she could feel it in her bones. Musk wasn't just a billionaire with his fingers in too many pies. He was the architect of something far more dangerous, far-reaching. "And what exactly is it you've built, Musk?" she asked, trying to mask the unease creeping up inside her. "You've heard of the neural nexus, haven't you?" Musk's eyes gleamed. "You're looking at the future. The collective was just the beginning. What I'm working on, Madison, is the true evolution of humanity. I'm giving the world a choice, whether they realize it or not." Chase stiffened beside her. "What does that mean?" Musk leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper, as though he were revealing a secret. "The neural nexus is the key. It's a system, One that can integrate human consciousness directly with artificial intelligence. Imagine a world where we are no longer bound by the limitations of biology, where human minds and machines are one. A perfect world, no war, no hunger, no disease. Just evolution. Madison's stomach churned. This was it. This was the power Musk had amassed, something so monumental that it could change the entire fabric of society. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He was a would-be god, reshaping humanity according to his own vision. And he had been planning this for years, quietly manipulating governments, corporations, and even the people closest to him to bring his dystopian dream to life. But now, with the files they had stolen, she had the power to expose it all. "I'm not letting you do this," Madison said, her voice firm. "You're not a savior, Musk. You're a tyrant. You can't play God with people's lives." Musk's gaze turned icy, his eyes narrowing. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Madison. You've been playing a childish game, challenging me like I'm some kind of villain in a story. But this is bigger than you. It's bigger than the world you know." He took a step closer, and for the first time, Madison felt the weight of his presence. It was as though the room had grown smaller, the air thicker. The power he exuded was almost suffocating, and she realized just how much danger she was in. But she didn't flinch. This wasn't just a battle of wits. It was a fight for the future of the world. "And the people you're using?" Chase asked, his voice laced with disgust. "The people whose lives you're destroying for this evolution. You're willing to sacrifice everything for your vision." Musk's smile faltered for the briefest of moments. "In every great revolution, there's a price to be paid. I'm not asking anyone to follow me. I'm giving them the option to join a new world, whether they're ready or not. And if they resist? Well, that's why the collective exists." Madison's mind was spinning. She had known Musk was dangerous, but this was beyond anything she had anticipated. This wasn't about technology or money, it was about control. Musk wasn't just reshaping industries. He was trying to reshape the human experience itself. But she wasn't ready to give up yet. She had something Musk didn't expect. With a sudden, swift motion, she pulled the encrypted flash drive from her pocket and held it out in front of her. "This is over, Musk. We have the evidence. We can expose everything, the collective, neural nexus, all of it. It's just a matter of time before the world knows the truth." For the first time, Musk seemed to hesitate. His eyes flicked to the flash drive, his expression darkening. The room seemed to hold its breath as the tension grew thick. "You think you can take me down with that?" Musk said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're a fool if you think you've won. The people who are really in control, they're already moving to eliminate the threat you pose. It's already too late." Before Madison could respond, the lights in the room flickered, and the sound of an alarm echoed throughout the mansion. Musk's calm expression never faltered as he looked over at the door, a faint smirk appearing on his lips. "I didn't expect this to be easy," he said. "But you've made a grave mistake, Madison. The game isn't over yet." Suddenly, the door burst open, and a squad of armed guards flooded the room. Madison and Chase were instantly surrounded. Musk stepped back, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I'm not the one you need to worry about now," he said, his voice almost too calm for the situation. "You've just sealed your fate." The guards moved in swiftly, but before they could get any closer, Chase pulled out his own weapon. Madison did the same, and for a moment, the two sides were at a standstill. Musk raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "You think you can just walk out of here?" Musk's voice was sharp now. "You think you can just expose me and escape with your lives?" But Madison wasn't backing down. She had come too far, and she wasn't going to let Musk's threat stop her now. The flash drive, the truth, was still in her hand. And she wasn't going to let it fall into his hands. The tension in the room was suffocating. Armed guards surrounded Madison and Chase, their weapons pointed directly at them. Musk, ever the calm and calculating figure, stood at the center, watching the unfolding scene with an unsettling detachment. Madison's mind raced. This was the moment of truth. She had the evidence, the truth, in her hand. The flash drive. It contained everything, the damning files on the collective, Musk's ties to them, the plan for the neural nexus, the blueprint for a new world order. But now, she had to make sure she didn't let it slip away. Chase, standing next to her, glanced at the guards and then at Musk. His jaw was set in a firm line, his hand tight around the weapon at his side. They were outnumbered, but they still had one thing Musk didn't, the element of surprise. "You think you've won, Musk?" Madison said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of everything she had been through. "You've underestimated us." Musk raised a hand, signaling his guards to stay back. He stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with a strange mixture of amusement and something far darker. "You think you're going to change the world, Madison?" Musk asked, his voice cold. "You and your little rebellion. You don't even understand the scope of what I'm doing. The neural nexus is the future of humanity. And you're just a blip. A distraction." Madison tightened her grip on the flash drive. "You've spent your whole life building a world where you control everything. But you've forgotten one thing, Musk. People have always fought for their freedom. And you're not going to stop them." Musk smirked, his eyes narrowing. "Freedom? You're so naive. You think this is about freedom? You can't even comprehend what's at stake here. The world is broken. I'm fixing it. I'm offering a solution." Chase stepped forward now, his voice low but full of conviction. "Your solution isn't freedom, Musk. It's control. You're not saving the world, you're enslaving it." Musk's expression hardened. "You don't get it. You can't possibly understand what it's like to hold the world's future in your hands. To be able to shape the course of humanity. To make everything better. I've spent years, decades, building to this. And you," he pointed at Madison and Chase. "You think you can stop me with a few stolen files? You think you can bring me down?" Madison took a step forward, the flash drive still in her hand, her eyes locked on Musk. "It's not just the files. It's the truth. You've lied to everyone. You've manipulated governments, corporations, and people's lives. You've sold them a false dream." Musk chuckled darkly. "And what's your truth? The world is a mess, and I'm the only one brave enough to fix it. The world will thank me in the end." Just as Musk finished speaking, the sound of an alarm blared through the room, followed by a series of loud noises from outside. The ground beneath their feet seemed to rumble, and suddenly, a voice crackled through the intercom speakers. "We've disabled the security systems, Mr. Musk," came the voice, unmistakably belonging to one of the team's hackers. "Your guards won't be able to follow you." Musk's eyes flickered with something approaching panic for a brief moment, before he masked it with his usual composure. "You're trying to sabotage me." His voice was sharp, a flicker of rage seeping through. But Madison didn't flinch. "It's too late, Musk. The truth is already out there. It's just a matter of time before the world sees it." Musk's gaze flickered toward the door, and then back to Madison. His eyes were filled with cold, calculating fury now. "You really think this is over? You think you can just expose me and walk away unscathed? I didn't build all this for nothing." He suddenly lunged at her. The guards, who had been waiting for Musk's signal, began to move, but it was too late. Chase acted first, swiftly disarming one of them. Madison was ready. She raised the flash drive high and shoved it toward Musk, the data containing everything he had tried so hard to protect. Musk reached out for it, but as his hand closed around it, there was a sudden explosion of light and sound. The room went into chaos. The lights flickered, and an electrical surge coursed through the mansion, disabling the security systems and sending Musk's forces into disarray. The guards tried to regain control, but the entire facility was in lockdown. The intercom crackled again. "You've failed, Musk," the voice from the intercom said, colder than before. "Your empire is crumbling." Madison's heart was pounding as the realization sank in. The team had done it. They had breached the system, shutting down everything Musk had worked so hard to build. But Musk wasn't done yet. With a sudden, surprising move, Musk pulled a hidden device from his pocket. It was sleek and metallic, and the moment he activated it, the room was filled with a strange hum, followed by a blinding flash of light. For a brief moment, Madison couldn't see anything. The sound around her was muffled, and her head spun with confusion. But as the haze began to clear, she realized with horror that the device was something far more sinister than she had anticipated. Musk had activated a failsafe. "I've already thought of everything," Musk said, his voice more frantic now, as if he were trying to convince himself as much as Madison. "Even if you expose me, you won't be able to stop the system. I'm untouchable. And this world, my world, will rise, whether you like it or not." But just as he spoke, the hackers on their side flooded the system with one final blow, disabling Musk's device, unraveling his last-ditch effort. Madison's heart was in her throat as she looked at Musk, now standing amidst the disarray of his empire. It was over. His mask had cracked. The truth was out, and there was no going back for him. "You were right about one thing, Musk," Madison said, her voice steady, even as adrenaline surged through her veins. "You built something that can't be undone. But you were also wrong. The world isn't yours to control. Not anymore." Musk stood there for a long moment, silent, staring at the destruction around him. Then, slowly, he turned and walked away. The last battle had been fought, and he knew he'd lost. His empire, his dream, was slipping through his fingers. Madison glanced at Chase. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with quiet triumph. Outside the mansion, as the sun began to rise over the horizon, a new chapter of the world was beginning. The files had been released to the public. The truth was out. The collective was exposed. Musk's vision was shattered, and people around the world were starting to wake up to the reality of what had been done to them. Madison smiled faintly, feeling the weight of the victory settle into her bones. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been clean. But they had won. The fight was far from over, but this was a victory for the people. And that was enough. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?